Hello, welcome to module 2 of our last week of our course. In the last module, we have learned how to make a model for a negative feedback circuit. Now in this module, we will try to model a small positive feedback circuit and try to understand the behavior of this circuit using simulation of that model. So let us start. So if you remember the last module, we have a simple negative feedback. We have just rearranged the molecules to get a positive feedback out of it. So let us look in first at the figure or the graphical model of this positive feedback. So S is my input signal which controls production of X. X get degraded. X is a enzyme, is a kinase. So X phosphorylate Y to YP. And interestingly, YP activates production of X. So what is happening? X is produced and its production is triggered by the external signal S. X acts as an enzyme. It phosphorylates Y to YP. YP in a positive feedback produces more and more X. And as we know that this phosphorylation, dephosphorylation are actually reversible process in a phosphorylase signaling cascade, YP also get dephosphorylated to Y by a phosphatase E, which you can say present as a constitutively in the system. So that's my positive feedback. It involves X, the kinase, Y, which gets phosphorylated by X, and trigger more and more production of X. S is the input signal which is triggering the production of X, and I have a constitutive phosphatase E which dephosphorylate YP to Y. So let us now try to write the mathematical model for this simple positive feedback circuit. And we will consider here this Y to YP interconversion by reversible kinase and phosphatase activity is actually following Michaelis-Menten kinetics. If you remember, we have discussed in earlier modules that if I have a reversible reaction both following Michaelis-Menten kinetics, then this can have a sigmoidal ultra-sensitive switch-like behavior. So we will take advantage of that type of behavior in this system. So let us start writing the ODE. First for X. So X is produced only when you have the input signals. One is S and the other one is the YP. So the equation ODE for X is dx dt is equal to Ks into S. This is the production by external signal. Ks is the rate constant plus Ky into YP concentration. So Ky is another rate constant, minus Kd into X. X is getting degraded by a first order decay. Now for the YP dyp dt is equal to combination of two Michaelis-Menten kinetics formulation. The first one, K1 into X into Y. X is the enzyme, Y is the substrate which is getting phosphorylated to YP. So I have K1 into X into Y divided by Km1, the Michaelis-Menten constant for this phosphorylation reaction, plus Y, the substrate, minus the second Michaelis-Menten reaction, that is the reverse reaction from YP to Y, that is K2 into E. E is the phosphatase or enzyme involved here. YP is the substrate divided by Km2, that is my Michaelis-Menten constant for the second reversible reaction, the dephosphorylation reaction, plus YP, the substrate. Now we know that we can assume that the total amount of Y, that is free Y and phosphorylated Y, summed together is a total Y, and that remains conserved. I can consider that remains to be constant. So if I consider this conservation, then this second ODE, this is the first ODE for X, the second one is for dyp dt. Second ODE get rearranged where Y is replaced by Yt minus Yp. So that's what I have done. So dyp dt is equal to K1 x into yt minus yp. So I have replaced y by yt minus yp divided by km1 plus yt minus yp. That is again I have replaced y by yt minus yp. Second Michaelis-Menten formulation, that is minus k2 eyp divided by km2 plus yp remains as same as. So this will not be my second OD, this will be my second OD. So I have two ODs, the first one for x, the second one for yp, and I have replaced y in terms of yp and yt, so I don't require to write a separate OD for y. So these two OD represent the model for this simple positive feedback circuit of a phosphorescent system that I have shown in the graphical model. So now we will try to analyze the behavior of this system. And when I say I want to analyze this behavior of the system, primarily here I want to study the steady state behavior. So if you remember, to understand the steady state behavior, one starting point can be to look into the null clines. So let us look into the null clines here. First, the x null cline. So if I have to write down the x null cline, I have to take the ODE for x, that is the first ODE I am taking. This is the first ODE. dx dt is equal to ks into s plus ky into yp minus kdx. Now here, to get the x null cline, I will consider dx dt equal to 0. So if dx dt equal to 0, then this first ODE becomes 0, and by simple algebra I get ks into s plus ky into yp minus kd into x is equal to 0. So I will now rearrange terms so that I get yp on my left hand one side of the equal to sign and x on the other side, and it is very simple. You can see rearrangement here is very simple. So I get yp in one side, that is yp is equal to kd by ky into x minus ks by ky into s. It is a simple straight line equation where this part, that is ks by ky into s, is essentially representing the intercept, and this whole term, that's kd by ky, is actually the slope. So yp versus x is a straight line having an intercept ks by ky into s, and the slope is kd by ky. Now one thing we should keep it in mind here, that means this null cline depends upon input signal s, because this null cline has s term in its intercept. Now look into the y null cline. The dyp dt, the ODE for yp, is exactly same as we have done for the negative feedback earlier in the earlier module. So I will not go in much detail of it. You can simply consider for y null cline dyp dt equal to 0. Then you can do algebraic rearrangement so that you get that ODE equal to 0. Now I want to keep yp and x on one side. So here it will be easier if we keep x on one side and everything else on the other side. This you must have seen in the earlier module. So here x and yp has a sigmoidal relation, and that sigmoidal function depends upon the shape of the sigmoid, depends upon km1 by yt, that is the ratio of Michaelis-Menten constant and total y, and km2 yt, that is second Michaelis-Menten constant and total substrate, and obviously E, concentration of E, that is the phosphate concentration. This we have dealt in an earlier module. So now I have two null clines, and I will plot these null clines on the phase plane of x versus yp and try to find out where they intersect, because the point of intersection will be my steady state. Let us do that. What I have plotted the first the yp null cline. If you remember, just now I said from the yp null cline's equation, x versus yp will have a sigmoidal behavior. So I have a sigmoid behavior here. Now remember, x versus yp relation for yp null cline does not have any input signal s term. So that means this yp null cline does not depend upon input signal. But X null line has S term, the input signal term. So X null line will change with my input signal. So let us consider first S equal to 1. So if you consider input signal S equal to 1, then you get this straight line shown in this blue color, and that is my X null line. Let us clean a bit. Now I will change S from 1 to 5. Before I change, you notice here when S equal to 1, for this parameter value that I have used to draw this plot, there is only one point of intersection here. So I have only one steady state. Now if I increase S from 1 to 5, obviously my straight line moves right hand side. So now I have this new blue line as my X null line. And you can easily see now I have 3 points of intersection between X and Y null line. So that means I have 3 steady states. Let us increase S further. I double S to S equal to 10. Now this blue line is my X null line. Now I have only one point of intersection there. So that means that is my steady state. So what is happening here? As I change S, my Y null line does not change because Y null line does not have any S term in that equation. Whereas the X null line has S term, the X null line is a straight line and the intercept of that has S term. So if I keep on changing S, as I increase S, my X null line shifts right hand side and number of intersection between X and Y null line changes. When S is low, for example S is equal to 1, I have only one intersection. That means I have only one steady state. When I have a higher value of S, for example 10, the way I have shown here, I have again one point of intersection. That means I have one steady state. When I have S in between, for example S equal to 5, I have 3 points of intersection. That means I have 3 steady states. Now we will look into the issue of stability of this steady state. You can take help of drawing the phase plane plot the way we have discussed to draw arrows around a steady state. You can try that, but that is a bit cumbersome. I have used MATLAB to draw these phase portraits. If you know MATLAB, you can try it. Otherwise, let us discuss about it and I will show you some numerical simulation to understand the behavior in a different fashion. So when I consider S equal to 1, this is my phase portrait. This is my Y null line. This is my X null line. And I have only one point of intersection. That is my steady state. If you look on the phase portrait, if you start somewhere here at t equal to 0, the phase trajectory shows that you will collapse at the steady state here. If you start somewhere here at t equal to 0, then following the trajectory in the phase portrait plot, I will collapse here at the steady state. Here, if you have started at this at t equal to 0, then you can collapse again on that same steady state. So this steady state, if you do exhaustive analysis, which is beyond the scope of this course, you will find that this steady state is a nodal sink. I have only one steady state at S equal to 1, and that's a stable nodal sink. What happens if I have a higher value of S equal to 10? Then again, this is my one null line, that is the X null. This orange one is my Y null line. And I have one point of intersection here. And the phase portrait says that if I start from here, suppose t equal to 0, then I will move along this blue trajectory and collapse here. If I start somewhere here, again I will collapse on the single steady state. So again I have only one steady state, and that steady state is a nodal sink. So it is a stable one. Nodal sink, if you remember, is a stable one. What happens if I have S equal to 5? So if you remember what we have, if S equal to 5, then I have 3 points of intersection. And if you look at the trajectories, this trajectory is going and hitting this steady state. This trajectory again going and hitting this steady state. Whereas if I start from here, the trajectory are taking me to the other steady state at the lower value. If I start from here, I will follow this trajectory and collapse at this lower steady state. If I start somewhere here at t equal to 0, I will follow this blue line and collapse at this steady state. Nowhere the trajectory collapse at this middle or the middle steady state. So this middle one is a saddle point, and I have two lower and higher values of steady state which are nodal sink. So you can see easily that depending upon S, not only my number of steady states changing, but their stability behavior is also changing. Now let us look into it in terms of bifurcation. If you remember what is bifurcation, in bifurcating system I have one or more parameter. Depending upon that value of the parameter, my number of possible steady state changes or the behavior of around those steady state, the issue of stability, instability around those steady state changes, or both of them changes together. So in this case, as I change S, my number of steady state changes and the stability of those also changes. So what I can do, I can draw a bifurcation plot the way I have shown here with S in the horizontal axis and steady state value of yp in the vertical axis, and I can plot different steady state value of yp as I change S. And I can see that some of the value, for some value of S, I'll have only one steady state. That is, in this region, my system is monostable. In the higher values of S also, in this region, my system is monostable because I have only one stable steady state in those cases. In between, I have option for any value of S. For example, if I take S here, I have 3 steady state. 2 of them are stable and 1 is unstable. So this region, the middle region, is actually bistable region. Now, one thing we have to keep in mind, this particular figure I have not drawn based on the exact results from our model. To draw this type of bifurcation plot using the ODE based model that we are discussing is not so easy. It requires either in MATLAB or other tools like XPout. Those are beyond the scope of our discussion here today, but in general the behavior will be like this. What we will try to do now is that we will use JSIM and do numerical simulation and try to draw this type of a bifurcation plot, and which is very easily doable and you can do using your desktop. So remember, this system has bistability. So let us numerically simulate this system. I will use JSIM again, and the JSIM code is given here. The code is a bit lengthy, that's why I have broken down in 2 pages. The first part you can see easily. Obviously you first define time. Initial time is 0, maximum time I have taken as 50. I have 2 dependent variables, x and yp, and I have set of parameter values here. These parameter value we can change. For example, we will keep on changing S, we will keep rest of the parameters as constant. You can easily notice km1 and km2 are very small, 0.05, whereas yt is 1. That means the ratio of this km and yt will be much smaller than 1. And that is required so that I get a very good sigmoidal yp null climb. Now, rest of the part of the code, I have to define the initial value. Here I have shown x equal to 0, yp equal to 0. This part we will keep on changing during our simulation to see the change in behavior. And rest of the things are the simple, the ODEs. This code you can write in your own JSIM model and try to simulate the way I will show the simulation now. What I have done first, I have done the simulation of this model with the initial condition where both x and yp are equal to 0, and I have varied s using the loop option. If you remember, JSIM has a loop option. And I have plotted the data. Look at figure 1, this one. I have plotted time t here and yp in the vertical axis. Only for two higher value, I have varied s from 1 to 10. Only for these two higher value 9 and 10, the steady state is near 1. That is a higher value. Whereas for rest of the other value of s, starting from 1 to 8, you can see the steady state are near 0.1. So lower value. So you can easily see, depending upon the input signal s, I am getting two different regime. Till s equal to 8, I have got a steady state which are very close to each other and at a lower value of yp. Whereas when I have increased s to 9 or 10, they bunch together and they are giving me a higher steady state. I can use this data and plot a second plot where I will put s in my horizontal axis and steady state value. Remember the steady state value of yp in vertical axis. How do I get the steady state value? I take the value of yp at the t equal to 30 or at the end of your simulation. By that time, the system has reached steady state. So I have plotted those values and you can easily see when s is higher, around 9 and 10, I have a steady state which is a higher value, near 1. Whereas in these regions starting from 1 to 8, my steady states are low and close to 0.1. So that means you can easily see this system has an interesting jump in steady state. If I start at x equal to 0, yp equal to 0, and if I keep on changing s up to s equal to 8, I will remain as a lower steady state. After that, if I increase s, make it 9 or 10, I will jump to a higher steady state. There is a drastic jump. Now let us do the same simulation, but change the initial condition. So now I am taking x equal to 5 and yp equal to 0.5. And I am doing the same simulation again. Now you will see just the opposite behavior. If I have s equal to 1 or 2, then they give me a lower steady state value. For rest of the other value of s starting from 3 to 10, the system converges at a higher steady state and those values are very close. So if I now plot the steady state value from this simulation in a plot, which is a bifurcation plot essentially, with s in my horizontal axis and steady state value of yp in this axis, I get this type of data. So if s is lower value here, then I go to this lower steady state which is close to 0. Whereas if I am on a higher value of s, I reach this higher steady state which is close to 1. So you can see there are two regimes depending upon the value of s. One is higher steady state, one is lower steady state. But where you will reach depend upon the initial condition. So now let us merge these two data sets and combine in a single plot. What I have done, I have merged those two data sets and combined in a single bifurcation plot. So this is my complete bifurcation plot, that is s in the horizontal axis and the steady state value of yp in the vertical axis. You can easily see up to this region the system, irrespective of the steady state, the initial condition, have only one option, the lower steady state. So the system is monostable. Whereas for this higher value, again, irrespective of the initial condition, the system reaches these higher steady states. So again here, the system is monostable. In between this S, in between the gray region that I have shown here, the system is bistable because it has two steady state shown by these red dots, the higher steady state, and these blue dots, the lower steady state. Depending upon the initial value of x and yp, that is the initial condition, the system will either go to this lower steady state or to the higher steady state. So that's what bifurcation concept tells me. So what I have got here, I have got a partial bifurcation plot. I will tell it partial because remember both these stable thing are actually, both the steady states are actually stable. If you compare with a real bifurcation plot the way I have drawn in few slides back, you have another dotted line somewhere here which represent unstable steady states. But in numerical simulation, your simulation will never reach your unstable steady state. So you only get stable steady state. So this unstable steady state cannot be drawn by numerical simulation. So we only see the stable steady state. Whatever it is, we are not much bothered about the unstable steady state because the system in reality will also never reach an unstable steady state. It will move away from it. So my numerical simulation tells me that this system has bifurcation. Depending upon the initial value and the value of S, the system can be monostable or bistable, and if you are in a bistable regime, which steady state it will go will depend upon the initial condition. You can easily draw this type of bifurcation plot by numerical simulation even for other type of network or circuits. Let us jot down the points. So the key points for this module is that we have modeled a positive feedback circuit with reversible phosphorylation of a protein. And remember, this phosphorylation is both the phosphorylation and dephosphorylation are following Michaelis-Menten kinetics. We have shown the system has bifurcation with respect to input signal S. Simple null-Klein analysis will show that. Numerical analysis also show that. Depending on the value of S, you can have two situations. One, you can have one stable steady state, or you can have one situation where you have two stable steady state and one unstable steady state. Therefore, the system is actually bistable in that region. And remember, this type of situation where number of steady state is changing with S, the input signal, is happening because your YP null-Klein is non-linear, is sigmoidal. If it has been linear, then we had always only one point of intersection between X and YP null-Klein. That means we always have only one steady state. But here the YP null-Klein is non-linear sigmoidal and X is linear one. So I have multiple type of possible intersection depending upon the value of S. So this non-linearity is crucial to give rise to this bistability. And the last one, what I have discussed, is that you can actually do bifurcation analysis by simple numerical simulation the way I have shown you. What do you have to do? You have to change the parameter. In this case, parameter is S, the input signal. I am changing the value from 1 to 10 for S, and I am simulating for different initial conditions, and then I am getting the steady state value from my simulation. And I am plotting S versus steady state value of YP from the steady state values. And that gives me a partial bifurcation plot which tells me the system is monostable in some value of S and is bistable for some value of S. That's all for this module. See you in the next one. Thank you.